Greetings and welcome to our Friday night Lenten Vespers service. It is the first Friday after Ash Wednesday in the year 2021. I'm Reverend Dawn Fortune of the Unitarian Universalist congregation of the South Jersey Shore. We worship at 10 a.m. Eastern Time on Sundays on Zoom, and you can join us by live link that's on our website at uucsjs.org. This evening's service will be a collection of readings and music and a time for quiet contemplation. This video will be available on YouTube in perpetuity, so if you wish to share that with someone, you can do that. And so for this first Friday in Lent, I have our chalice lighting words I found in Deuteronomy, and these are adapted from chapter 30. Moses said to all Israel the words which the Lord commanded him. See, I have set before you today life and prosperity, death and adversity. Choose life, so that you and your descendants may live, loving the Lord your God, obeying God and holding fast to God. For that means life to you and the length of your days, so that you may live in the land that the Lord swore to give to your ancestors, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. Welcome to our Vespers service. Let's start off now with some music for contemplation. Our first reading on this first Friday of Lent is a revisit of the passage from the prophet Isaiah that we heard on Wednesday evening. This is what is in the lectionary, and I think it's worth reading twice. So this is from chapter 8 of the prophet Isaiah. Shout for all you are worth, raise your voice like a trumpet. Proclaim to the people their faults. Tell the house of Leah and Rachel and Jacob their sins. They seek me daily. They long to know my ways, like a nation that wants to act with integrity and not ignore the law of its God. They ask me for laws that are just. They long for God to draw near. Yet they say, why should we fast if you never see it? Why do penance if you never notice? Because when you fast, it's business as usual, and you oppress all your workers. Because when you fast, you quarrel and fight, and strike the poor with your fist. Fasting like yours today will never make your voice heard on high. Is that the sort of fast that pleases me? A day when people humiliate themselves, hanging their heads like a reed, lying down on sackcloth and ashes? Is that what you call fasting, a day acceptable to the Lord? On the contrary, this is the sort of fast that pleases me. Remove the chains of injustice. Undo the ropes of the yoke. Let those who are oppressed go free and break every yoke you encounter. Share your bread with those who are hungry and shelter homeless poor people. Clothe those who are naked and don't hide from the needs of your own flesh and blood. Do this and your light will shine like the dawn, and your healing will break forth like lightning. Your integrity will go before you, and the glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. Cry, and the Lord will answer. Call, and God will say, I am here. Provided you remove from your midst all oppression, finger-pointing, and malicious talk. If you give yourself to the hungry and satisfy the needs of the afflicted, then your light will rise in the darkness, and your shadows will become like noon. The Lord will always guide you, giving relief in desert places. God will give strength to your bones, and you will be like a watered garden, like a spring of water whose waters never run dry. You will rebuild the ancient ruins and build upon age-old foundations. You will be called repairer of broken walls and restorer of ruined neighborhoods. That's from the prophet Isaiah, and it's from the Inclusive Bible. So as we are in this first week of Lent, let us consider that Lent is not a time to engage in public suffering, but is a time to work on quiet contemplation and humble self-improvement. And that requires us to acknowledge that we are imperfect and that we can be improved. And there are things that we don't know, and we might be wrong. And those aren't always comfortable things to hear or to think or to acknowledge, but they're real. And in this Lenten period, I encourage you to think on those things. Where can I be more compassionate? Where can I be more kind? Where can I help someone who is less fortunate than I? Let's have some music now and contemplate the words from the prophet Isaiah. Our second reading this evening on the first Friday of Lent is from the Psalms. This is Psalm number 51. We'll read about half of it. And this is considered to be a psalm of David, and it is written when the prophet Nathan came to him after David had relations with Bathsheba, which is polite language for raped Bathsheba. And David was filled with shame and remorse. And so this is what it is said that this is what David is credited with having written at that time. Psalms 51. O God, have mercy on me. Because your love and your great compassion wipe away my faults. Wash me clean of my guilt. Purify me of my sin. For I am aware of my faults, and I have my sin constantly in mind. I sinned against you alone and did what is evil in your sight. You are just when you pass sentence on me, blameless when you give judgment. I was born in sin, conceived in sin, yet you want truth to live in my innermost being. Teach me your wisdom. Purify me with hyssop until I'm clean. Wash me until I am purer than new-fallen snow. Instill some joy and gladness in me. Let the bones you have crushed rejoice again. Turn your face from my sins and wipe out all my guilt. O God, create a clean heart in me, and put into me a new and steadfast spirit. The first thing I want to reflect on in this piece is the notion that David proclaims his guilt to God, saying that he has sinned against God alone. And I need to be clear right here that David sinned against Bathsheba as well, and her husband, whom David sent off to war on the front line to die so that he could have access to his wife. So, in the time in which this was written, which we have to put into context, Bathsheba was not considered, did not have the fullness of personhood. And there was no law against what David did in his sexual assault of her. But let us say here that what he did was a sin against God, and yes, it was. And it was a sin against Bathsheba. He violated her, and that was very wrong. And he pleads to God for his forgiveness. I would suggest that he needs to plead to Bathsheba as well, and to do what he can to atone for his sins. So in this Lenten period, we are aware, part of what we do is we get in touch with our sins. We get in touch with our failings, where we are lacking, the things that we've done that we regret. And this is a time of the year when we devote ourselves to trying to right those wrongs, trying to unlearn those behaviors, trying to make reparations, trying to get right with God and get right with ourselves so that we can live with integrity again. So, this is a difficult piece of scripture from the Psalms. And it reminds us that when we sin, we talk about sin as being that which separates us from the divine, that which separates us from our ability to be our best selves. And it doesn't just separate us from the divine, or separate us from God. It separates us from our community and the divine that is in our community. So when we sin, when we do something wrong, when we do something that we need to correct it within ourselves, but we also need to correct it with the person we have offended when we are able. And so that can be a practice as well during this Lenten time. Let's have some music now and reflect. Our third reading this evening for our Friday Vespers service is from the Christian Scriptures. It's from the Gospel according to Matthew. This is from chapter 8, and it's verses 10 through 16. This is a passage that takes place during Jesus' public ministry, and it is a story of when he meets a tax collector named Matthew, presumably a different Matthew than the one who wrote the passage here, but I'm not sure. I'm not that level of biblical expert. But what I'm going to read now is just the passage in the Gospel according to Matthew. Now it happened that while Jesus was at table in Matthew's house, many tax collectors and notorious sinners came to join Jesus and the disciples at dinner. The Pharisees saw this and complained to the disciples, saying, "What reason can the teacher have for eating with tax collectors and sinners?" Overhearing the remark, Jesus said, "People who are in good health don't need a doctor. Sick people do. Go and learn the meaning of the words, 'I desire compassion, not sacrifices.' I have come to call not the righteous, but the sinners." The disciples of John the Baptizer came to Jesus and said, "Why is it that while we and the Pharisees fast, your disciples don't?" And Jesus replied, "How can the guests at a wedding feast mourn while they are still all together? The time will come when the guests will be left alone, and then they will fast. No one sews a piece of unshrunken cloth into an old cloak, because the patch will pull away from the cloak and the tear will get worse. Nor do people put new wine into old wineskins. If they do, the skins will burst, and the wine will run out, and the skins will be ruined. No, they put new wine into new wineskins, and both are preserved." Now this passage, I happen to think that the piece about the wineskins is sort of a distraction from the overall lesson, which is said in other parts of Matthew's Gospel as "Judge not, lest you shall be judged," where Jesus is eating with and visiting with and being in the company of the fringes of society. The tax collectors were considered to be the most corrupt, the most sinful, the most despised among Hellenistic culture at that time, and other sinners. That's sort of a generic term for the people on life's margins, the people on society's margins. And Jesus said to those who would judge him, "Look, I'm not here to collect perfect people. I'm here to collect people who know that they want to be better." And I think that's what we do in church, and that's part of what our task is during this time of Lent. It's when we recognize that we're not perfect, and we want to abandon some of our less helpful, healthful, functional habits, and pick up behaviors and habits and practices that are healthier and more compassionate and more justice-oriented. So let's sit and have some music now and contemplate what Matthew has to offer. So we're coming to the end of our Vespers service this evening, and I want to take a moment just to reflect on what we've heard from our three readings tonight. We had Isaiah, we had a psalm, and we had the Gospel according to Matthew. And in each of these, the message was about, about in 21st century terms, about letting go of our ego, about admitting where we have done wrong, and saying I'm sorry, and saying I want to get better. And in the psalm, that's a story of David regretting his behavior, and in the story from Matthew, it's the story of Jesus welcoming those who seek his comfort. And in the prophet Isaiah, we heard about doing your good works quietly so that the glory doesn't go to you, but just the kindness goes to those who need it. And so this first Friday of Lent, I invite you to take up a practice. Maybe just try it for one day and see how it works, and if you like it, try it for another day, of doing something good, something kind, something justice focused, but don't let anybody know. Don't let anybody know. Don't, because when we do that, when we do tell other people about this and we get their praise, we get the little shot of dopamine. This is what Calvin came to talk about later, in later years, where he argued that no human was capable of absolute altruism because we did good for that sort of good feeling we got from it. We didn't just do good because that was the right thing to do. We did it because there was a reward. So I invite you to do something good without reward and without notice, and see how you feel. And then don't tell me about it, but think about it, contemplate. That's our service for this week. I hope you've enjoyed it. I wish you a good and quiet and contemplative week for Lent. You can join us on Sunday mornings for worship, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. The Zoom link is on our website, uucsjs.org. I hope you'll be there. You can share this video with your friends by doing whatever the share, click, linky thing that happens like down here. And this video will be available if you want to watch it again and think some more about it. So now, in our tradition as Unitarian Universalists, I will use the traditional words that this congregation uses for extinguishing our chalice at the end, like we do at the end of each service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Blessed be safe, and be well. See you next time.